Hello, Dr. Michael Arnold here again, and Bernard Barons the Bear. Hello! And this video is called, with the original name of the song, Where Have All the Flowers Gone? Where have all the flowers gone? Quite right, Bernard, in good voice. That is actually an anti-war song, comparatively recent, and it's circular. It's quite a sad song, really, because what's it actually saying? Where have all the flowers gone? Well, the flowers have all gone to young girls. Where have all the young girls gone? The young girls have gone to young men. Where have all the young men gone? They've gone to soldiers. No, not as partners or lovers, no, but they've become soldiers, in other words. And where have all the soldiers gone? They've gone to graves. They have been killed in war. That's what it's all about. And where have all the graves gone? Well, we're back full circle, because the graves have gone to flowers again. And then we start again with where have all the flowers gone? Because the flowers have come up, cover the graves. And it's, when will we ever learn, is the punchline. In other words, this is going on too often. But in actual fact, it's quite a modern feature, this mass killing of soldiers. And soldiers who are conscripted by force. It was challenged originally in America in terms of slavery, saying this is contrary to the 13th Amendment because it's slavery. But the Supreme Court said, no, it isn't. You have a duty to defend your country. But it's also discriminatory, mostly in favor or against males, because in most countries it's only men who are conscripted, who are called up. If women are, it's in a lesser capacity, not front line for the most part. The only country that I know of where that is not the case is Israel, but there about a third of women called up get exempted on religious grounds. So even there it's not quite what it seems. But it is highly punitive. Yes, if your country is seriously at risk, then, of course, you might think people would rush to the standard, would rush to join the army. And there is a myth about young boys of 14, 15 rushing to recruiting centres for that purpose in England at the beginning of World War I, for example. Well, there were some who did that. They falsified their age, and they were happy to sign on the dotted line. Yes, there were some. But actually, the drive for volunteers, which was organized by Lord Derby, was a flop. And it was for that reason that conscription was introduced. It was only then they thought that there would be enough enthusiasm without it. And Lord Derby's punchline was, your country is in danger, which was absolute nonsense at the beginning of World War I. Britain was not in danger of being, what, invaded by Germany, swallowed up by Germany, ruled by Germany? Nonsense, nonsense. It was a complete lie. And most people were not taken in by it. As a result, conscription was introduced. In America, something similar. Of course, America waited until 1917 to join. And even then, President Woodrow Wilson asked for volunteers. He only got 73,000, He was expecting 1 million, and again, conscription was introduced there for that reason. And these huge conscriptions and mass killings really only date from the period when the Western world was supposedly democratic or becoming democratic. It all really dates back only to the time of the French Revolution. Is that accidental? I don't think so. The huge army of Napoleon, the Grande Armée, as it was called, quite rightly so, was vast, based on conscription. Napoleon being the heir to the French Revolution. And the armies facing him on the part of Prussia, Austria, and so on, were tiny by comparison. That's why the Prussians were really taken by surprise. They were used to winning wars under Frederick the Great, but those were all with professional armies against other professional armies. Now they had a professional army, but they were faced by a huge army of conscripts. And as a result, Napoleon swept right across Europe until, of course, the famous defeat in Russia. And then finally Waterloo. And of course, the other powers got the same idea. They started conscription on the same basis as France. And that takes us into the modern period. The deaths in the First World War are absolutely horrendous. Yes, we have the unknown soldier, unknown warrior in Westminster Abbey, something similar in America. That individual is someone, a soldier who died and who cannot be identified. That's unforgivable. But he's not the only one. There were thousands like that, thousands upon thousands. That's how much the top brass cared about their own troops. These lives were just thrown away, thrown away, thrown away. The life expectancy of even a young lieutenant at the front in World War I was just a matter of weeks. They were just cannon fodder, and of course lower ranks even more so. And the conditions in which they lived during that war, absolutely unbelievable. The whole of the First World War was completely avoidable. Completely avoidable. But through diplomatic, I won't say errors, because a number of those diplomatic moves were quite deliberate, the war came and lasted a lot longer than anyone expected. It could have ended earlier by negotiation, obviously could have. And when it did end finally, the Peace of Versailles imposed such harsh conditions on Germany, which more or less guaranteed a Second World War. It's all very well saying the Second World War was all the fault of Hitler. There would never have been a Hitler in charge of Germany had it not been for the humiliation that was imposed on Germany by the Allies at the Peace of Versailles. Yes, Adolf Hitler would have been around, presumably, but he wouldn't have gained power without that feeling of humiliation that the Germans felt. It's completely the wrong approach to impose, for example, reparations, huge sums of money that Germany had to pay the Allies for supposedly causing the war, First World War. What nonsense. The result of that was the hyperinflation of 1923 in Germany, where money became worthless, the economy slumped, and again a feeling of humiliation swept over the land. Without that, Hitler would never have come to power, and there would never have been a Second World War. But both those world wars were completely unnecessary. And is it coincidental that all this happened during an era of so-called democracy? I don't think so. The leaders of all these countries were able to play on a sense of patriotism based on the individual's identity with their country at a time when they supposedly had some kind of say in the running of their countries. Although, at the time of the First World War, in Britain, by no means all males, let alone females, no females had the vote, and not all males by any means. Nevertheless, they played on this concept of patriotism and made people feel cowards who did not serve and give up their lives for their country, supposedly. Women were drafted in. It was a huge movement. Women with white feathers. Women would present a white feather to any male they saw on the street who was not in uniform, on the assumption that that person was a shirker, that that person was evading military service. Wasn't always the case. Some of these people were genuine conscientious objectors. Others were just on leave from the army. But whatever it was, what a cheek to say, you are a coward. You have got to lay down your life for me. To which the reply should be, why? Why? What demand have you got on my life? Why should I have to lay down my life for you? It's a lot of nonsense. That is the pseudo-democratic concept that resulted in all this carnage. And all the later wars have been hardly better. The Vietnam War was one of the stupidest wars ever fought in the whole of history, I would say. It was based on a complete misunderstanding of foreign policy. And again, the draft in America was resented. And I'm glad to say President Nixon was instrumental in ending the draft in 1973, and it has not been reintroduced. But that hasn't entirely stopped America from involving itself in stupid wars and unnecessary loss of life. But because the scale of the armies involved now is much smaller, it isn't quite so bad, but still quite avoidable. The Iraq War and the Afghan War have gone on for many years, both completely avoidable. And again, all part of this democratic ethos, which is fake. Fake. The sooner we bring it to an end, the better. Till next time.